This is the Hagmann Hagmann Report for today. It is a manic Monday edition. It's Monday, July 13th, 2015. We're coming to you live from the Hagmann Hagmann studios here in Northwest Pennsylvania. I'm Doug Hagmann at the helm with a fellow investigator, researcher, and most importantly, my son Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, America's premier father-son investigative reporting team. You know, it's our job to bring you the news behind the headlines, the news that is kept from you or shaped and twisted and hidden amid a funhouse of smoke and mirrors in the carnival we call the corporate media, and we do the headline and news triage so you don't have to. I'd like to thank everyone checking in with us. God bless each and every one of you. It just keeps getting better and better and better and better. I just got a fantastic letter in the mail. Well, they're all fantastic, but one stands out in particular. Maybe later on during the show I'll have to read this to you. It actually made me just choke up. I mean, man, there's a lot of great people out there. Anyway, thank you all for checking in with us from all over the world. For new listeners, of course, our scheduled time is Monday through Friday, 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. And our home base on the internet is HagmannandHagmann.com, 2 N's on Hagmann. The word and, spell it out, and spell it all out, crunch it together, and that's our home base there. There you can access us live as well as our past shows, social networking sites. Yes, we are on Facebook. We're on Twitter. And most importantly, from HagmannandHagmann.com, our original investigative reports. You saw how well I did with the updates this weekend, right? Yeah, I say that mockingly and jokingly, mocking myself. It was an incredible weekend of really sifting through some pretty heavy-duty research. And wow. It was
the manual to work the TV took you that long to read?
Yeah, right. The reruns of Gilligan's Island, right? No, it was a lot of research. Putting together some reports, but really, there's a couple of issues that I think are going to be affecting all of us here in the near term, and really putting together this body of information. We want to be accurate when we bring this forth. Anyway, tonight we're going to be talking about a lot of news. Folks, before we get started, I'm just so excited, just so absolutely excited to let you know that tonight's broadcast is sponsored by NatureBox. NatureBox, if you've never heard of NatureBox, well, have you been living in a cave? No, NatureBox, they ship great-tasting, guilt-free snacks right to your door. They've got over 100 flavors to choose from, 100 flavors of snacks. I mean, are they just fabulous? How about if I mention a couple? Can I do this? How about blueberry nom noms? Yeah, the name. Or lemon tea biscuits, or whole wheat chocolate chip cookie bites, mini Belgian waffles, whole wheat strawberry figgy bars. Oh, golden apple tea biscuits. Really, those are really good. Sea salt crunch. Oh, sun crunch. Wow, fantastic stuff. But folks, go to naturebox.com/CFP radio. That's naturebox.com/CFP radio, or HagmannandHagmann.com. Scroll all the way down, click on the ad for NatureBox. There you will find free snacks. That's right, free snacks right to your door, a free trial of their favorite snacks. That's naturebox.com/CFP radio. More on that later. But now we've got a lot of stuff to get into. Joe, welcome, and it's about time you showed up. Haven't seen you all weekend. We've been doing independent research and investigations ourselves. So,
yeah, it was just like you said, a weekend filled with heavy reading and research.
Well,
and research running in circles. It feels like
at some point, at some times we do.
I mean, you have so much information. You just look at it. The 18 trees that were cut down to use to print all these documents out, only a tenth of what actually we have in our computer pertaining to subjects, and you just want to rip your hair out.
I
mean, my gosh. And it's not like it's something that's been being worked on for a year now at least. But all that is the collecting, the reading, the studying, the analyzing, comparing. As we get closer to the end goal, the transparency is becoming more frequent in the language, which was something at first that was very hard to get around. Lots of useless words filled the documents with a few sentences here and there actually were the meat of the whole thing. Now it's getting a little clearer in what they want to do.
Well, a couple of issues here I think are important just to set the tone for tonight. Folks, we've got over 200 sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants, illegal aliens, not immigrants, but illegal aliens, lawbreakers here, illegal lawbreakers in this country.
Now, I have a question. I didn't mean to interrupt you. The sanctuary cities
yet you did. Yes.
Are only for people who are here illegally, or are they for all criminals?
Well,
I mean, I'm serious.
No, the sanctuary cities are set up for what they do is they allow they just look the other way in terms of enforcing the laws for illegal immigrants or illegal aliens. I shouldn't say immigrants, but lawbreakers. So if you're in this country illegally and you're worried about getting bounced back, well, you don't have anything to worry about from the sanctuary cities, at least on a local level or a municipal or a county level, if you will, or whatever jurisdiction that might be.
Unless you stay at a Motel 6. I don't know if you know about that, but one of the first hotel chains in the world to run all the license plates and names by the police every night for warrants across the country.
Well, see, what they do is they'll skip hey, if you're in this country illegally, that's fine, but if you have a warrant out for back child support, no, that's not fine.
Right, that's why I asked, because, the sanctuary city, it sounds like the name of a sanctuary,
right.
A safe haven, but they're ludicrous and ridiculous to begin with. First of all, they don't need sanctuary. What do they need sanctuary from? Acceptance and EBT benefits? Second of all, because the deportation is non-existent.
Well, we'll see. Okay, yeah, in more than 200 cities across the United States, and most listeners know this, there are sanctuary cities. These state and local jurisdictions have policies and laws and executive orders and various regulations allowing them to avoid cooperating with federal immigration law or enforcement authorities. And, see, isn't that interesting? Because on the federal level, you've got these relaxed and discretionary, these relaxed laws. In other words, no one is enforcing the law. Period. Not the federal government, and among these sanctuary cities, over 200 in the United States, not those. But the news here is that, and this is pretty disturbing, really, when you crunch the numbers. Over 200, some 276 sanctuary cities, nearly 50% more than previously revealed. They released over 8,000 illegal aliens with criminal records, or those who actually have charges filed against them, criminal charges filed against them. They set them free. Now, this is in spite of ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Bureau for deportation. Now, just so people understand this, you've got the executive branch of the government. They're putting pressure on the various other branches, or the judicial branch, which, of course, they don't have to put much pressure there, but the judicial branch is attempting to put pressure on agencies like ICE, for example, not to enforce the laws. Well, ICE is one that, hey, okay, we're going to do our job, at least on the surface and down below the mid-management level. We're going to do our job. Well,
yeah.
Did you
hear that?
That's crazy.
In San Francisco, the sheriff, what he was doing with the relations with ICE and handling of the...
go ahead and tell the listeners.
Well, this was a week back or so, I remember reading an article that the sheriff would police officers were catching illegal immigrants and turning them over to ICE themselves. And the sheriff said that he was the only one that had the authority to do that, and basically gave a memo or the understanding out to all the officers. So the officers had to call the sheriff when they were to hand over an illegal immigrant to ICE. Well, the sheriff was not taking the immigrant and turning him over to ICE. He was letting him go. So he halted the police officers from giving them over to ICE, and then took control of that, and then neglected to do his job. In fact, broke the law. Shouldn't even be a sheriff anymore.
Right, and these jurisdictions need to recall or put these people's feet to the fire. I mean, this is really ridiculous when you get into these numbers.
Is that from the Examiner?
Well, it's the Washington Examiner led with the story, but you've got to drill down behind because forming the basis for the story on the Washington Examiner are reports from the Center for Immigration Studies and Judicial Watch, and also Shadow Stats. Now, all of these have the Center for Immigration Studies, I think, is the only one cited here. But that is concurrent. The information there is concurrent with the Shadow Stats for the background of the numbers, as well as Judicial Watch in terms of the Freedom of Information Act requests that were filed for the different numbers. But think about this. I mean, you've got nearly 17,000 criminals. The jail doors are opened for over 17,000. Now, the Washington Examiner says 17,000, but when you drill down and look at start tallying up the numbers in the various reports, okay, here's what the Examiner says. 276 sanctuary cities let 8,145 illegal offenders free in just 8 months, 17,000 total. Okay, now that's what the headline says in the Washington Examiner, and that's correct, but it's a little bit low because out of those 276 sanctuary cities, I'm just going to finish this thought and I'll give it back to you, but you've got more than the 17,000. You've got almost twice as many, not 34,000, which would be twice as many, but roughly 29,000 when you crunch the numbers. Illegal offenders, people in this country illegally being set free over the last 8 months, or since January 1st, December 1st, according to the numbers I've got. Bottom line here is the charges that face these people that are being let go include kidnapping, rape, assault, attempted murder, child abuse, underage sex with children, and also sex trafficking. You heard me correctly. Possible.
Don't worry about that because they have the people.
Well, I mean,
over here, I'm reading an article on the USA Today about the sheriff. And further down in the article, it gets into other stats pertaining to Cambridge, Massachusetts, where they're saying 75% of the detainees, illegal immigrants that were rounded up to be detainees,
did you just say Cambridge, Massachusetts?
Yeah, Cambridge, Massachusetts. In a resolution passed last year by Cambridge, Massachusetts, the city said the program was being abused by ICE to round up undocumented immigrants with little or no criminal record. And they said that undermined the relationship between the local community and the immigrants. They said 75% of ICE detainees issued from 2008 to 2011 were placed on undocumented immigrants with no criminal history. Now, they say further in the article, in 2008, 38% of people deported from the country had a criminal conviction on their record, according to ICE. By 2014, the figure had risen to 85%.
Right. Correct. Yes. Yeah, you're looking at this is in every way intentional. in part of a larger plan here. This is not for, I think Glenn Beck described this as a humanitarian crisis at the border. I'm not sure in what spirit he meant that. Remember that a couple of years ago with the children on the... Okay.
Well, with the children, I understand.
Well, I mean, these were teenagers, gang members, but what we have here is the intent, the intent to really destroy the country from within, and you need this foreign element here to do. Well, you really don't need it, but it certainly is a force multiplier to cause chaos.
With all this, bad publicity and heinous crimes coming out in the news that are being committed by these undocumented people, there's a pushback now. Sanctuary City's not changing policies after San Francisco shooting. A woman murdered in San Francisco that police say was committed by an undocumented immigrant released from jail has not prompted other sanctuary cities to change their immigration detention policies.
No.
It goes on to explain what happened in that situation. It further states more than 200 cities around the world passed laws in recent years to prohibit law enforcement officers from detaining suspects based solely on requests from immigration and customs enforcement agents. While many examine their policies in the wake of July 1st shooting, none has reported a decision to make a change. Miami-Dade County Commissioner said the shooting was a tragic breakdown of the system that allowed undocumented immigrant with extensive criminal history to be set free, but warned about the knee-jerk reaction of local police as de facto immigration agents. I don't see that would make a change. I would fight it, she said. If the only reason someone is in custody is an ICE hold, we're not doing it.
Well, we have a case here from Michigan, an illegal immigrant from Mexico being held in the Van Buren County Jail for reportedly kidnapping a 13-year-old Florida girl, sexually assaulting her at a home in Hartford. And this guy was arraigned over the weekend. He faces extradition to Florida on the kidnapping charge. We could talk about these cases all day long. The reason we're bringing this up is you're going to be hearing more and more as the race for the office of the president accelerates. You're going to be hearing more and more about the immigration issue. The lies behind this issue on both sides, Republican and Democrats, are just absolutely incredible. The only person I've heard speak even close to the truth on this, and without taking political sides, is Donald Trump. Say what you will about the guy, he at least has this issue right. I haven't listened to him on other issues, but this one here, he's nailed it in terms of what's going on. Jeb Bush, on the other hand,
he's on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, and I think most of them are. You have Jeb Bush talking about this act of love, allowing him to stay here, and of course his brother George W. claiming that they're doing jobs that most Americans won't do, and Rick Perry, of course, says if you don't allow him to stay, you don't have a heart. And,
one thing is right, they are doing jobs most Americans won't do because they're getting paid less than probably half minimum wage. And
well, right.
Yeah. It's not that they won't do it or the American citizens won't work. It's that how do you compete with that?
Well, and it's interesting here in our hometown. I had talked with a company, landscaping companies. Are big on, and this is one thing we noticed when we worked in New York City, where landscaping companies, painting companies are all contract companies, but any manual labor. But depending on, like Ohio, Pennsylvania, big landscaping companies are big on hiring illegal aliens. I'm sorry, and so I had contacted one of the landscaping companies. I did an interview under pretext and asked for some information. Come to find out, 85% of their workforce is being paid off the books and are illegal immigrants. I did find this out through direct contact with this company. I'm not going to name the company. I contacted our sheriff here, and our sheriff was interested, however, said it's a federal matter.
Yeah, the sheriffs have been basically stripped of any real law enforcement powers.
It's ridiculous. Other things we're going to be talking about tonight as the program does unfold will be the TPP, what's going on here, why it is, what you haven't heard.
El Chapo.
Well, him too. You know, yeah. But getting back to the TPP, the TTIP, TTIP. We're going to be talking about that. Talking more about the illegal immigration or illegal aliens in this country. We're going to be talking about geopolitics all across the Middle East and also some issues related to the arms and drug smuggling, both in the Middle East as well as America. Go ahead, Joe.
I got a very odd story. The son of Boston police captain who was a first responder to the Boston bombing has been arrested in a terror plot. The estranged son of a respected Boston police captain was arrested on the 4th of July by FBI agents as part of a counterterrorism operation against alleged ISIS-inspired domestic terrorists, according to federal officials that told ABC today. Alexander Sekulo, 23, of Adams, Massachusetts, was taken into custody on gun charges after buying 2 pistols and 2 rifles from undercover FBI informants, the FBI said. In the search of his apartment, they found other guns loaded and possible bomb-making equipment, including a pressure cooker and other components.
Let's be clear.
Along
this is
with attack planning papers and jihad paperwork.
Okay, so this is the son of the police chief,
who was chief in Boston and one of the first responders at the Marathon bombing.
Okay.
Just weird. I mean, a little strange.
Well, yeah, I suppose. So, but a pressure cooker too, no less. The very same modus operandi the Boston bombers used, and yeah, certainly something to.
He had jihadist paperwork, and the FBI agent said that he told the neighbors his name was Abu Ali al-Amariki.
That's what he said his name was?
Yeah. And the neighbors said he was a recent convert to Islam. Very interesting.
So that's his Muslim name then?
Yeah. And in a second, not weird headline, but a alarming one, Democrats declare war on words, husband and wife.
Very important, and we're going to be getting into the homosexual marriage. It's not gay. It's not. It's homosexual marriage agenda. The homosexual agenda.
More than 24 Democrats have proposed legislation that would eliminate the words husband and wife from federal law. Those gendered terms would be replaced by gender-neutral words like spouse or married couple, according to a bill from Representative Luis Capps, a Democrat in California. The Code for Marriage Equality Act recognizes the words in our laws have meaning and can continue to reflect prejudice and discrimination even when rendered null by our highest courts, Capps said. Our values as a country are reflected in our laws. I authored this bill because it is imperative that our federal code reflect the equality of all marriages. It goes on from there. I don't quite understand what they're trying to.
Oh, I do. They're expunging all of the normal language.
They can expunge it from the law, but who in the? I mean, people aren't going to stop. You know, I saw a story this weekend where some lady went to a flea market and saw a Confederate flag and started going into convulsions.
No, it wasn't a lady. It was a guy.
Oh, it was a guy?
Yes, it was a guy. He called 911. See, and this is I suppose we should probably sit down and talk about what we're going to talk about.
I didn't read the story. I saw the headline. But when I'm reading this, they make it sound as though this is some horrible thing, and this is the first thing I thought of, somebody walking up and seeing the word husband or wife and freaking out. This is the conditioning from the mass media on the American public.
You're talking about, okay, just to be clear, you're talking about the the case in Massachusetts, I believe it was.
Yeah, I'm not sure where exactly it was.
In the Northeast, where there's at the flea market on Saturday, the person, this gentleman, apparently, and from the I watched the news, the local television news station, and I've got some comments to make on that here very shortly. But the offender, this took place at Redwood County, the Redwood Country Flea Market in. It was Wallingford, Connecticut. And what happened was, bottom line, this shopper perusing the tables there at this Redwood Country Flea Market, again in Wallingford, Connecticut, strolled by a table where there was a Confederate flag and Nazi historical merchandise for sale at this flea market. So what this person did, and if you watch the news from Channel 8 up there, you'll the pronouns used suggest that the complainant was a male. The police chief, William Wright, commented, as well as the mayor. Okay, here's basically what they're saying. Okay, this from Channel 8, as well as the American Mirror. There was a table set up with this material. This, according to Police Chief William Wright. This troubles me how this is being presented, because once more, words mean things, and the way things are stated mean things, and there's this conditioning process, and people. Oh yeah, this is a great example. You've got to listen to how this is being presented, and for how short the Confederate flag's been demonized in the news. Right. Think of people like Christians or. Oh wait, it's coming. But here's the bottom line. So this guy, yes, it was a man, passes by or sights this table with the Confederate flag and Nazi historical trinket memorabilia. He says, "I was shaking, almost vomiting. I had to run. My grandmother had numbers." Now he was referring there to the tattoos put on put on by the Nazis on prisoners. Okay, the caller, this guy, called 911. The guy that was shaking, the guy that was shaking, the guy that was offended, and he said, "Look, at this flea market, they're selling Confederate flags, swastikas, and pictures of Hitler and other historical Nazi items." So how long did it take for the SWAT team to get there? Now, hold on. The police responded. Now think about this. The police responded, and if you watch the news on Channel 8, not only did the police respond, the mayor responded to this story. The NAACP and the ACLU all got involved. You think this was a setup? But listen to exactly what the police chief said. No one was arrested. There was no crime committed. Okay, this is me now, and I'll tell you. Okay, but listen to what he said with response to the call and the reason no one was arrested. And here's what Police Chief William Wright said, and I quote, "The reason no one was arrested was because the items were being sold on private property." End of quote. Well, now what's wrong with that statement? Because it's not illegal to sell a Confederate flag or Nazi memorabilia. It doesn't. It's not illegal. It's not contraband. No, the only thing that would be illegal is if it was on public property and they didn't have a permit. Technically. Correct, but you know, the other part of this too is they interviewed a guy in or around Wallingford, Connecticut. You know how these news stations, they go out and they try to find. Well, they interviewed this guy from Wallington who owns a Army surplus store. He agreed. He said, "Oh, they shouldn't be selling that stuff out there." By the way, do you think he might have had an ulterior motive and agenda for saying that? Sure. Okay, it's called a capitalistic. No, but this guy just looked like he was out to lunch, basically, in terms of really talking to. And he was an older guy. I mean, you're talking, perhaps a veteran of at least, if not Vietnam, certainly. Well, I would say certainly Vietnam, if not Korea. But anyway, he said, I can see why. You don't expect to see that out there. Okay, this is a kind of guy that's selling the same merchandise in his store. But the statements from people like Jason Teal, the president of the the Wallingford NAACP, he was contacted by News 8 to see what he thought. And here's what he said. Well, it's difficult because it's on private property and it's considered free speech. Really? Okay, the mayor, William W. Dickinson, Jr. Oh, he was on the phone right away to Chief William Wright. I had to check with the chief over what is actionable and what isn't. We're talking about a flea market here. Unless something violates state or federal law, there's no jurisdiction for government to do anything. We had to ask, is it something controlled by law? Now, here's why we've been talking and driving home the homosexual agenda. You've got to understand. The template for the homosexual agenda is being used by the power elite, by the people, by the global elite, to change the words, to change the culture, to change the history, to rewrite history. The very same template that's being used by the homosexual activists, the head of the homosexual activists, is being used in the matters of the Confederate flags and everything else that has something to do with culture and moral and our heritage of our nation. So please understand that when you read this story, if you read this story and if you look at the news reports and listen to what the chief of police is saying, the only reason no one got arrested, the sale was on private property. Wait a minute. No, the reason no one got arrested is it's legal. There was no laws broken. There were no laws broken.
When does that matter when it comes to terms of arrest? No, I know what you're saying.
But
it's
see,
craziness.
You've got to understand, we are in the middle of this hypersonic conditioning of words and of this is I'll tell you who should have been arrested. Person who called 911. Seriously, you're calling 911 for emergency services for a police officer to respond to a legal event. That person should have been arrested right there, or at least cited with a summary, if not a misdemeanor charge.
Yeah, it's like the lady who called 911 over chicken nuggets at McDonald's.
Right, exactly. So, of all the people, either this person that made the 911 call is a hypersensitive wuss, or has an agenda, or both.
I mean,
they should publish this person's name, photograph, because this is ridiculous.
We could use it to our advantage if the TSA would adopt the Confederate flag as their logo. We might make progress.
Well, that's a good point. That same metrosexual idiot could probably walk through a TSA checkpoint and not only accept it, but perhaps even enjoy it. I might suspect. And that doesn't. So let me get this straight. The jack boots of the TSA, their uniforms don't upset you. All the other everything else doesn't upset you, but the mere sight of a Confederate flag and World War II historical memorabilia sends you into near convulsions, to where you've got to get the mayor, the chief of police, NAACP, ACLU, all involved in this. You got to be kidding me. But see, we should not be surprised, and it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse because this is the template they're using. This is why you better pay attention. Not yet. But see, now you watch. Now here's what's going to happen. Now you follow this story. I guarantee this is going to happen. Maybe not next Saturday.
It might have already happened. Go ahead. I don't know.
They are going to ban the sale of any Confederate flag or Nazi memorabilia at this.
You won the prize.
And you watch.
Now here, it's a step further. Hate crime. Professor calls for arresting Americans who display Confederate flag.
Listeners, we got to do something about this. Maybe we should put our logo as a Confederate flag, and you know, I don't know. I mean, this is an assault on free speech. This is pre-crime. I mean, this is straight out of Minority Report, basically.
Did you hear in some counties they're digging up old Southern generals from the Civil War and removing their bodies from the county line?
Yep.
I mean, if people can, I'm sure everybody can out there, most people can wrap their head around that. But if you sit there and think about that, they're digging up bodies
that
have
moving
been
the
dead
graves
for 200 years.
I mean, to be less objectionable about, they're moving the graves
because the dead bodies are bothering them with their rebel flag inside that's disintegrated, or I mean. I do not get the logic. I can see taking them off the state buildings or, you know, whatever. When it comes to the actual flag, if people want to be crazy about it. But to that is just insane.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of insanity going on.
You look how fast this ball got rolling. People are going to start having heart attacks and shooting each other and, you know, dogs attacking. And, I mean, it's driving people to insanity, shaking and almost vomiting. I mean, think about being in that. You're shaking, you're almost vomiting. What would make you do that?
Wake
up in a tiger? Yeah, I mean, there's very few things that I can imagine would elicit that kind of response and be facing, you know, a death by
you know what,
shooting.
Seriously, no.
I just don't get it.
No, you've got to have. No, there's much more going on, folks. By the way, we're going to open the phone lines a little early tonight. I want to get your thoughts. You know, and by the way, I know this is kind of like non sequiturs all over the place. Tomorrow night we have a special surprise for you. Stan Dale, by the way, is recovering from back, and you know, he's got a bad back and some other issues. He's not going to be with us tomorrow night. He'll be back, I believe, the following week. But tomorrow night, Ross Powell, hour 1, Tim Alberino, hours 2 and 3, and Steve Quill is going to interview, be the head interviewer of both Ross Powell. You might remember him from our previous show with, what was it, last month? And also Tim Alberino, who's got some absolutely earth-shaking, groundbreaking news he's going to break on our show tomorrow night. That's Tim Alberino from the Alberino Analysis. So I want to let you know about that. We've been in contact with Charles Strange. He might be coming on to Michael Strange's father, Extortion 17. This week, of course, we've got Friday. We've got
Paul McGuire.
Paul McGuire. Thank you. I didn't want to screw that one up. I wasn't sure if that was Friday or not.
In the first hour on Wednesday, Sheila will be with us. She has a new book coming out, and she's going to talk about
Sheila Zielinski. God bless her. She's got a new book, and
she's still plugging away, doing.
She's doing very, very well, actually.
We were on her show a few weeks back. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
So that's the schedule. I know that was kind of out of the blue left-handed turn there, but I wanted to get that out before any further in the show.
Well, we're talking about flags here. How about this one? Christian flag removed in Alabama. This was just from last week. Amid the hysteria over the Confederate flag on public property from Texas to North Carolina, an Alabama town has removed the Christian flag after threats from an atheist group. The mayor says the town took down the flag that was flying over the police department after the Freedom from Religion Foundation threatened to sue the municipality. The flag had been flying since the 1990s, and the anti-Christian group says an unnamed citizen contacted them to complain. I guarantee that unnamed citizen is, what's his name, Mickey Weinstein? That's his organization, the Freedom from Religion group.
Right.
The city council met in executive session to discuss a legal matter and emerged to say the flag would be coming down. According to the mayor, another municipality was sued and had to pay over $500,000 in damages and legal fees. This is according to the report. Who are they paying damages to? Who is this guy getting the money? I mean,
well,
you fly a flag, a Christian flag, a religious flag, as a city, as a municipality, and you get, as you said, there's no law against it.
Right.
You got to pay $500,000 in damages. Who was hurt?
There you go. I mean, do we have to say anything more about this?
No, because these stories make me angry, and when I get angry, I don't.
Well, the bottom line here, and I think, please understand why we're bringing this up. It's not to. There's 1,000 things we could be talking about, but this is really the best way to explain. Not the stories themselves. Yeah, they're kind of important, but what is the most important about this is, number one, the template that's being used. It's the same. If you look at the template with respect to homosexual agenda, it's the same template being used for the Confederate flag. It's the same template being used for any type of an attack on
the communist planks, the Nazi
right.
The point
this
agenda.
Is all tied together.
Yeah.
It's all really tied together in a big way. And if we know, and that's the other thing too. I was reading Hosea. It's important for us to understand the game plan of the enemy. My people will perish for lack of knowledge. Well, there's a reference there, and I think one can certainly understand this, that we need to understand the tactics of the enemy so we can respond appropriately to them and handle them and identify them as watchmen. We're all watchmen. Everyone listening to this program, folks, you're appointed to be a watchman. Sorry, you are. I believe anyway. That's what I believe. So you've got this responsibility yourselves to understand to the degree that you feel comfortable to understand the enemy's game plan. And this is why we're bringing it's not the issue of the Confederate flag.
Obviously, because
it's not that. Yeah,
across New Jersey, New York, people have ISIS flags hanging on their yards and in their porches. So
exactly, and they do,
I know, I know.
It's really ridiculous. But
and it's meant to be that way. It's meant to make you want to pull your hair out and poke your eyeballs out and just die in your own pool of blood from the stupidness that is in this world. But it's designed chaos. It's organized. I don't want to offend people. I was going to say retardness, but it is completely. It's doing this to reprogram or change your mind and the way you think.
That's why, and Joe, we had a talk before airtime. Folks, that's why we cannot afford to say gay marriage. First of all,
what's the difference? I mean, I don't understand. When I was growing up, gay, homosexual meant the same thing.
No, it doesn't.
Except gay used to mean happy.
Right. Look what they're doing to the language, and this is the incremental change. Gay marriage. First of all, there is no such thing.
Well, that's debatable.
No, it's
Nobody
not debatable.
Has happy marriages?
Well, okay, there you go. Now you're catching on.
I'm done on that.
But no, we cannot afford to say gay marriage. I don't believe any more than we can afford or should give legitimacy to Obama as being the president. We could call him the putative president, meaning, okay, it's debatable whether he holds that office legally based on his lack of qualifications. But the bottom line here, we cannot afford to use words that advance the agenda of the enemy and also marginalize our own position. Why shoot ourselves in the foot?
Yeah.
Because words mean things. It's homosexual unions, even if you want to...
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
But if you were to apply that to the vocabulary as a whole, we'd have a big problem.
No, we have a big problem because we haven't applied it to our whole vocabulary.
And it's too late now.
It's not too late now.
Not for people who want to learn and pay attention.
We must fight this semantics. We must fight the semantics of change, or the change of the semantics here. We must use homosexual. End of story. No, not gay, but homosexual. Marriage, homosexual marriage, there is no such thing. First of all, is it biblically based? No. It's an abomination. There are certain things that God hates so much, and that's one of them. He'll call it an abomination. Marriage is defined biblically as the union between a man and a woman. Nothing else. Not a man and a cat, but a man and a woman. That's what marriage is. It's already been defined that way, and that's accepted in the English language. And if you look at marriage in the dictionaries up through the first half of the 20th century, you'll see the distinction. Now look at the dictionaries now.
And this is done for purposes of the law and
no, okay. I'll allow that, I guess.
I'm going to give you an example. The word sophistication. The American culture has twisted the definition of the word sophistication to mean almost anything.
It used to be a pejorative term.
Because of its stretch in meaning, the word can be considered a weasel word. It has become problematic that sophistication is carelessly used in the English language and strays so far from its original meaning. The word sophistication has two distinct meanings in our history. These two meanings are not at all consistent and are in fact completely opposite. The English language sophistication first meant deception or dishonesty. The more familiar definition, meaning wise or experienced, appeared later.
Right. Now you notice the evolution of that word. Why is this important? Because it's being applied to marriage. It's being applied to a lot of things. Okay, I mean, and folks, you can pick out different words, but
we have this great tool called the internet. You can search, even back to the Greeks' publications. You can search for anything, any history. I mean, you can look up, lexicons for English, all the languages throughout history, and start sitting down and looking through, I started looking at the Black's Law Dictionary. You'd be surprised what is in there.
You've got to go back, and you've got to... you've got to go back in time.
What would you think the definition of person?
So that's actually a legal term. It was a legal term, but go ahead. I mean, if you want to get into that, we can.
Well, real quick, just to give this example, because this was in a...
Is there something pulling on your mic, Joe?
No, I don't know what it is. I might have to tighten this screw. All right, let's see. Why, are you hearing that?
Yeah, it's going through my head like a hot knife through butter here. It really is.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Webster's Dictionary. It means a mask or a... it's like a actor on the stage, a character. Human individual, sometimes used in combination with, especially by those who prefer to avoid man in components applicable to sexes, a character or a part in a play. It talks about, it's also a mask or a disguise. And then if you go to this is Webster Dictionary. If you go to Black's Law Dictionary, it explains it in great detail about, it has nothing to do with a human being at all.
Well, that reminds me of the biblical terminology for actor, for example. What is actor in the Greek lexicon? It's hypocrites, basically. Hypocrites. And
in the person in the New Testament, if you remember, there's some interesting verses. I think it's in Timothy or Peter, about not respecting persons. And I never understood that. Like, why would that, well,
is that an artifact of translation? When you say that from the Bible, because,
Well, right. And then you go to the definition or the root word, and just like Nathan Leal on Friday showed how the word fear is used throughout the Bible. There's at least 4 different definitions for that word, meaning 4 other words were used in place of fear, and fear was the only English word that they used to, because it was, warning somebody,
right,
or alarming somebody, then scaring somebody or frightening somebody, and it had taken on a much broader interpretation than was meant, because when you look in the lexicons of the root words, whether they're Greek or Hebrew, they have numbers assigned to them. And when you see the word fear, you see that it has 4 or 5 different numbers depending on where they're used at. And
correct.
Nathan made a great point, because what people call fearmongers, could be paying somebody a compliment, sounding an alarm when something is wrong. Not fear. And here's the example.
And this conversation was actually started by my tirade against the change of the meaning of words. And again, I think this is important for people to understand. Please don't fall into this. Don't get roped into talking the language of the Marxist, communist, progressive, whatever you want to call those people. Oh, we'll just call them communists. Don't get caught up in that. There's no such thing as gay marriage. There's no such thing as a gay person unless they're happy. We have to go back to the actual meaning of the words, the English language meaning. It's a homosexual, and it's not a marriage, because by definition, a homosexual marriage is not possible.
One root word meaning for person is favoritism in the Bible. And then the other term, or the only other one I can find, means, let's see, those all I have, I'll have to find a good example. Here it is. Countenance, aspect, appearance, presence. And then James, it says, if ye have respect to persons, ye commit sin, and are convicted of the law as the transgressors. And there's other examples in there too. But this is why it's important to understand the language.
Exactly.
And to know and this is something that I haven't learned until recently. But remember that book, Leviathan?
Yes.
From the 1651. It has a big chapter, or 2 chapters on this, on the significance of the meaning of words, and how, basically you read it today, and you can tell there was some spiritual influence behind those writings, because we're seeing the fruits of what was talked about would happen. And basically, this is confusion, what has been created. Well, we could be saying the word tree, and invoking some kind of...
You mentioned the word Leviathan, for example.
Yeah.
Okay, Leviathan in the occult the Enochian keys, if you look at the symbol of Baphomet, the goat of Mendes, the 5-pointed inverted star, around the circle. There's two circles, one interior, one exterior. The Enochian keys, I think there's 5 of them, one at each point, spells out Leviathan, meaning creature from the abyss. So just think of that when you say Leviathan, in reference to, well, whatever you might say it in reference to.
Leviathan has a very important biblical meaning, as it is one of 2 monsters per se referenced in the Old Testament. Leviathan, they say, could be a crocodile. There's always this dispute of what it is, but in Job chapter 41 on Leviathan, it says this. It says, well, I shouldn't read the whole chapter, but
please, no.
It is so important that people do read it, though. I should read the whole chapter. We only have a few minutes left before the break, but what it talks about obviously is not a sea or land creature, and from my studies, what I gather, it is the authoritative systems on Earth. The other monster written in the Old Testament was Behemoth, but Leviathan is referred to as being so fierce that no one man can destroy it. It's basically like a secret brotherhood fraternity that controls everything. It says they're so near to one another, no air can come between them with the scales. Job chapter 41, read about Leviathan, because it is in my opinion, the union between church and state under a false god system.
Oh, of course. Exactly what it is. And to get there, let us remember that America is a captured operation. How many times have I said that? Here we are talking about the meaning of words, for example. But this is important, because this is how we're being boiled like the frogs in the proverbial pot of water. We are on the verge of a collapse. We're a captured operation. You've got 2 political parties, at least to the uninitiated, to those people who still adhere to the normalcy aspect of things, when in fact we just have one party. At every level of government, individuals, groups are making decisions, they're enacting policies that are causing America, our country, great harm, and they do so with impunity. We're seeing this all over the place. Patriotic citizens of this country, they're seeing organizations who have claimed to be on their side. And this is important, folks. The very organizations you think are on your side, and I'm not going to name them specifically, but you can think of some conservative groups, they are repeatedly betraying every one of us. They're aiding the enemy. They're adding aid and comfort to the very forces who are destroying our country from within. The news media is a captured operation as well. They refuse to report any critical issues or individual items that would be, or even the totality of stories.
The governing bodies of religious institutions and denominations.
That's right. Exactly. There is, people accuse us of seeing conspiracies behind every rock or under every rock. Well, I'll tell you something. Okay, there are some. You can attribute certain things to conspiracies and be absolutely correct, or you can contribute some things to, or attribute events to coincidences. Well, a lot of them are contrived, not coincidences. I think we're seeing more contrived events than coincidental events right at the moment. We're seeing right now the IRS targeting political enemies for persecution and prosecution, but primarily for persecution. You're going to be seeing this, and we're going to be talking about this as well. The IRS, or the people behind the agenda of the homosexual movement, are going after churches, their tax-exempt status, which is fine, I suppose, Because what will come out of that, and I do understand this, what will come out of that is the way churches were meant to be, and that's the smaller and in the homes of believers. But
more power in those believers because of their
right. But the collateral effect here. See, this whole idea that the homosexual agenda is just about homosexual rights, that is incorrect. It's that's really farthest thing from the truth. It is not merely, or it's not about homosexual rights or the rights of homosexuals. It's not about that at all. That's what they say it's about, but it's not. Let me just grab my note here, because I think this is extremely important for people to really understand. And I know I've driven this home before, but to state it differently, what this is all about is about breaking down the social norms in order for anarchy. This is to usher in anarchy. It's not just limited to homosexual rights. This is to usher in anarchy. Its promotion by the government is an act of civil war against the people. Now, you might think that's really hyperbole. That's hype. That's an overstatement. Well, if homosexuality is normal, then by inference, think about this, being a heterosexual or heterosexual activity is abnormal. So what is normal is being called abnormal. What the homosexual agenda is all about, and what they are unwilling to compromise is acceptance of homosexuality as a way of life, fully on par with heterosexuality. But it's not just about removing illegal discrimination, but it's about demanding approval, and persecuting, not prosecuting, but persecuting, marginalizing, vilifying those who don't adhere to that specific ideology. Now, remove the word homosexual from what I just said and put in, for example, the issue with the Confederate flag. Not the flag, but what it stands for, the heritage behind it. Good, bad, or indifferent, whatever your viewpoint is, it doesn't matter.
A government publication from just a few years ago opens with this line: government policies are needed when people's behavior fail to deliver the public good.
There's that collectivist attitude.
Whose public good are they?
Well, exactly. So we're looking at all of this. Well, you've got to look through you got to take a step back and look through this through a wider angle lens, because right now they're preparing us for a civil war. I said it back in 2013 from my source at DHS. This is what they're preparing us for. This is what they're pushing for.
Yeah. And listen, this document goes on to say in the next paragraph, to make progress in the concentrated effort of change and changing personal and social norms, we must, through education and persuasion, ensure certain behaviors they use examples like controlling fertility, reducing material consumption, biking to work, eating locally grown foods, become integrated as a matter of personal ethics. If enough people or certain people with social influence adopt these norms, there may be a tipping point, such as the pre-environmental norms, which became widely shared, and environmentally friendly behaviors became persuasive. And they go on to talk about this tipping point. They say as low as 10% of the population can cause a tipping point.
This is what Dave Hodges was talking about.
Flexible.
Right. Dave Hodges was talking about this, and Ted Broer was talking about this, about what Dave Hodges was saying.
Policy instruments such as penalties and regulations or incentives may therefore be required to achieve the behavior modification outcome. Meaning, we're going to change your behavior by making the bad behavior now acceptable, the good behavior bad, and rewarding the people for following suit. and punishing the people who don't.
Okay, we're going to hold the break here for a second because this fits right in. If you look at what Joe just said, look at the backdrop here, moments, or look at or go back and listen to what was said earlier in the program. But the Civil War, that particular objective by this Marxist or communist, I'll just say communist leadership, Obama and everyone around him, working in collusion with even the Republican senators, the conservative, so-called conservative leadership in the Congress, ultimately are pushing for a civil war. Now, in addition to what we've already talked about, some say is a collateral effect of the homosexual agenda and collateral effect of the collectivism. But I'll just say that the religious oppression, because the persecution of Christians and Judeo-Christians, because in order for the government to win its civil war against us, it must oppress Christianity and Judaism.
Yeah,
the Russians did this effectively for more than 50 years, Joe. The Chinese are still doing it. When religion, when the Judeo-Christian ethic ideology has been derided as an opiate of the people, or religion has been derided in general as an opiate of the people, it's actually it's not that. It's the glue that holds a society together in the face of moral relativism, which we're seeing right now. And Joe, I'll just say this: the state requires a population dehumanized by moral relativism. Yeah, and is willing to tolerate abnormal behavior. The state, the government, they need you to be willing to crawl over your neighbor, your family member, to get the crumbs that they offer. The goal of the elite has always been and continues to be now in earnest to replace Western Judeo-Christian religious convictions with atheism. But not even that. The Guyism, for example, or in the worst case, this religious or this indifferent tolerance of fake religions. And I'm including in that false religions, I'm going to include in that Islam, which has declared war against all of us. Anyway, if all religions are the same, then there's really no religion. We have to understand that. This is so, the bottom line on this is so evil.
It is. This is what they say. Policies can be more cost-effective in the long run if they feed back the influence into social norms so that behaviors become self-reinforcing. We know that values influence behaviors. What policymakers need to exploit is behaviors that will in turn influence values.
Precisely. And this is a good time to take a break. Folks, you're listening to the Monday edition, July 13th, 2015.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 on this Monday, July 13th edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. We are flying solo tonight, but we do have a great week of guests lined up. I don't want to forget, so I'm going to mention this now. Paul McGuire's prayer meeting is coming up.
Oh, please, yes.
And he's going to be coming on Friday to talk about it. But I'm going to make sure that we direct people to paulmcguire.us or hagmanandhagmann.com. You can find a link to his website. Go there and register if you can make it. It's in Southern California.
This is the single most important event. Folks, if you're within a day's drive of that event, please attend. It is the single most important event that you can attend yourself and have a carload of people with you. Anyone you can, your family, especially your family, the people closest to you. Please. You've got no idea. That's Paul McGuire's meetings, and we're going to be more on that. Joe, if you want to announce the date on that. Do you have the date handy right there?
I can grab it real quick. Hold on a second.
All right. Well, while you're doing that, let me just hit this. The first hour, to summarize the first hour, when we're talking about language and such, and gave those examples. We're talking about we're talking about propaganda, and we're being hit with propaganda from all sides, and propaganda has and it has already changed our nation.
Yeah, changing social norms and global environment challenges, right, and the complex interaction of behaviors, values, and policies in order to bring about the desired behavior.
Now, Hitler, and I bring Hitler up with the knowing that people will say you cannot compare Hitler, this overstatement of things.
Where do you think they got the ideas from?
Exactly. But propaganda, he learned that propaganda could serve his purposes even better than a political revolution could. In fact, he had to learn that the hard way. If you look back in history, in 1923, he tried to overthrow the Bavarian government. He organized this march through Munich, but it was aborted, and really it was a dismal failure. Now, he was tried for treason, but was given the opportunity to defend himself. And to his delight, his speeches were widely read in the newspapers. Now, at that point, he knew how to tap into the anger of the German people by rallying against the unfair treaty of Versailles, which is true, okay, and by propagating the widespread belief that Jews were responsible for the loss of World War I. Now, that's not okay. But he knew that the masses could be led if only he could tell convincing lies that had to be big enough. When you look through history, and especially at this time in history, Hitler ultimately was sentenced. I don't know how many people know this, at Landsberg prison for treason. That's when he wrote Mein Kampf, in which he outlined the basic plan to implement his agenda. And if you have not read Mein Kampf, or the English translation thereof, you'll see that he had this in solitude. He articulated the value of propaganda, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And he showed very adeptly that the use of disinformation could accomplish what at that time the brown shirts could not. And if you very carefully read what Hitler had written about the power of propaganda, he explained the techniques he used to win a hostile crowd to his side.
Was it summoning demons?
Well, that was part of it, actually. But he knew how to tap into the anger, how to handle people's objections before they even voice them, and how to get them to see the reasons for his philosophy. Now, he could be termed a master, for example, at reading human nature and knowing how to manipulate the masses to gain a tremendous following. He believed that books could never bring about a revolution, only the spoken word delivered by a person who could really connect with his audience. Think about this in terms of our current leadership. What did Barack Hussein Obama Barry Soetoro do in 2008? What does he continue to do? Now, I'm not comparing his actions to Hitler. I'm comparing his delivery.
He continues and expands on all of Bush's policies, which were considered, extreme far right.
Right, but you got to admit that Obama, through his countenance and his cadence speech, makes it more palatable. He could say the same thing Bush said, but it would be more widely accepted and has been by the Socialist Democrat Party. But anyway, what we're going after here is that Hitler knew that propaganda must be used to prepare the people for something much more drastic.
Look how he hid what they were actually doing to the Jews in the camps for so long.
Correct. And that's part of this.
I mean, we had guests on and talk about this, callers, and you reference it from books you read, about the trains going by taking the people. We had one caller just recently that referenced, how they were led as, or maybe it was Jonathan Conville. They were led as sheep to the slaughter, basically promised they were getting, to go take a shower and take up lodging when they were being led to their death.
Right, and this is a great, thanks for setting that up, because let me move to George Orwell for a moment here. In Oceania, George Orwell's chilling totalitarian state in the novel 1984, he provides this very compelling description of the so-called Ministry of Truth, how they used very subtle, sinister language called newspeak to brainwash people. This is exactly what is going on in America today and all throughout the West. The slogan of Oceania was, "War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength." Now, the new thought police were able to control the ideas that determine the political and moral views of that culture. Now, think about that. This is exactly what's taking place. The withdrawal of individual freedoms were sold to the population as a plus, as a positive. Slavery to the state. It was presented as the gateway to freedom and prosperity.
Wealth distribution.
That's correct. So Hitler knew that terms, that slogans, they could be used for a broader appeal. This is why this is so important. I come back to the homosexual agenda. Am I picking on the homosexuals? No, I'm going after, study the plan. Hitler knew, for example, that if he were to accomplish his goals, the capacity for independent thought would be suppressed, must be suppressed. Language must be corrupted to serve the sinister ends. This is exactly what we're seeing with the corruption of language. Gay rights, gay marriage. It's a corruption of our language for the purpose of sinister ends. And let me give you one quick example here. If you go to Auschwitz in Germany, the concentration camp, in Poland, that's where almost 1.5 million people were murdered. You can see the display of thousands of shoes. Most of them are children's shoes. That were children killed in the camp. When you go there, now I've never been there, but from stories I've heard from people, there's just no way of not shedding tears. But when Hitler starved the children, did he say that he was starving the children? No, he called it putting them on a low-calorie diet. I'm not making this up. The extermination of Jews, cleansing the land, euthanasia, the best of modern therapy. Does any of this sound familiar? Mm-hmm. Children were put to death in children's specialty centers. Now, I hope some people are getting chills up and down their spines. Why is it so important not to say gay marriage? Why is it so important not to say gay rights? Why is it so important to expose this agenda? For that very reason. Hitler's, the people around him, they never or very seldom did they say they were going to kill people, even when plans were made to exterminate millions. They spoke in abstract slogans, such as, you'll remember this, the final solution. Sanitized terms were used to camouflage absolutely unspeakable crimes. Planned massacres were spoken. They were spoken of in clinical terms to mislead, naive, and to gloss over the objections by those of conscience. And we do the same. No one speaks of killing preborn infants, do we? We don't say that. No. Pregnant women are removing a product of conception, a fetus, terminating a pregnancy. Politicians, they speak in favor of being in favor of a woman's right to choose, but do they complete that sentence? Can I ask you that? Do they ever complete that sentence? Rarely. No. Somehow, to say that they are in favor of a woman's right to choose to kill her preborn infant is just really too honest, too brutal, too clear, too chilling. So this is why it's important. Words are important.
Yeah, this Leviathan book talks about the manipulation of words and how they're used from metaphors to how our brain perceives them, kind of like symbols and numbers, and when the words are changed, different things are applied the wrong way. But it says it appears not necessary for any man that aspires true knowledge to examine the definitions of the former authors and either to correct them where they are negligent, set down, or to make them himself. For the errors of definitions multiply themselves according to the reckoning proceeds and lead men into absurdities, which at last they see but cannot avoid without reckoning anew from the beginning, in which lies the foundation of their errors, from whence it happens that they which trust to books do as they cast up many little sums into a greater without considering whether those little sums were rightly cast up or not.
Well, okay, so that's there's a lesson there. There's a message there as well. When you've got ordinary people really simply concerned about living their own lives, for example, you're busy working, you're busy going to school, you're busy taking care of your family. How can you be motivated? How can they be motivated to become part of an evil movement? Well, it's through the power of compelling propaganda, through intimidation. And there's another little thing here, too, through mass euphoria. It's possible for ordinary people to commit unspeakable atrocities. It really is. When they are swept up in this cultural current where everyone is both expected to fall in line and then they're rewarded for it.
What was that, the Milgram experiment?
Well, that's one of the...
I mean, that had to do with authority. And
yeah, exactly. I mean, yes, that and the experiments that followed. But, it's interesting, too, when you look at the climate that we're in right now, anyone who goes against the norm, goes against the narrative, is demonized by misrepresentations, by false evidence, by ridicule. With this pressure, folks, even rational and decent people who refuse to be co-opted, they start to question their own sanity. When you look around and everyone's saying, oh, it's a good thing, it's a good thing, it's a good thing. Well, that has a massive and incredible psychological effect. Mm-hmm. And we saw this we saw this in Nazi Germany. Dietrich Bonhoeffer warned Germany about Hitler when he was the chancellor, but no one listened because they wanted this fairness and the strong leader, and they were okay with the excesses. But so people overlooked the warning signs because of the passion of the people,
and how messed up we as a people are. Back to this document on the changing of social norms, they say one of the things that when you implement something or change something or get a small minority of people to feel a certain way, the rationale for these appeals is that people want to conform and that they use information about their peers and their behaviors as yardsticks against to which they measure their own.
There you go. That's exactly, yeah.
So feelings of guilt or pleasure, what others might think. They start to be concerned about how they are perceived by other people. And, this is advertising 101, also manipulation and brainwashing 101.
Well, if I can just quote Hitler one more time, I guess this is Hitler Day? But anyway, Hitler said that a big lie will always remain in people's minds, and Hitler said this, and I quote, by clever and persevering use of propaganda by clever and persevering use of propaganda, even heaven can be represented as hell to the people, and conversely, the most wretched life as paradise. Now, I quote, that's a direct quote from Hitler. Now, remember, all of this is sold, folks, under the banner of tolerance, and Hitler knew this. So, there it is, right there. I mean, that's why we have to pay attention to what's going on. We're being worn down. We're being caught up with the emotions. I mean, things are just being twisted right in front of us, and the causes, whether it's the homosexual agenda or whether it's the removal of the Confederate flag, or you insert agonizing, or not agonizing, but insert, whatever cause into the sentence. All of these are being portrayed as just and right, and it's wrong.
This document says only social norm management directly targets norms. Choice architecture, financial instruments, and regulations can alter society norms by causing people to first change their behaviors and then shift their beliefs to conform to those behaviors. It must be remembered that policies will not always change personal or social norms, as is evident by prohibition, but they go on to say that for the majority, the goals and the way that they're presented has everything to do with it to alter the behaviors. Like the Confederate flag issue comes to mind. This flag's been flying around for hundreds of years in the country. Nobody cares, gives it a second look. The government comes out and says, we're going to have to ban Confederate flags, or they're bad. And now people are having mental breakdowns when seeing one. I mean, I don't know. And then that makes me think of fear-mongering, that term fear-mongering. It's not fear-mongering. It is wholesale manipulation. And when I got a minor degree in business and in advertising, you know what you learn in advertising? The history and the theories of psychology.
Of course.
And that's all.
But that's the root. Madison Avenue appeals to the it's really magic, I suppose. I shouldn't say, well, part of it's magic, and
if you can have your beliefs manipulated to be changed, and it's not something you do or want to do, but if you are not grounded, and specifically grounded in the Lord or in your own beliefs, yes, you can be persuaded. That's why Jesus said in Matthew, when he gave a parable of those who received the word and those who there was only one that kept it, the other three had lost it some way. He described it as, like a change of the wind can come and take it out of your heart. That's why you have to be on fire for the Lord, or not, because the social influences will change you. And imagine what we were talking about at the end of last week, when the real mark of the beast system is at the doorsteps. How many Christians will fall for, not accept because I guess they'd have to accept, knowing what it is and the consequences. What would make them go along with that? I would say peer pressure, the fear of what could happen to their bodies on this life, the fear of not having access to anything in society.
Well, it would be a lot
none
more
of it
than
justifies.
that. Yeah.
But, you can see how they use these, to influence as many people as they can for behavioral changes. And it's not so hard to see now how a whole world can be deceived. How, the world had to be destroyed by a flood. The whole world, because everybody did nothing but think evil continually.
Well, in addition
they weren't
to the
made that way.
In addition to the DNA, the
well,
corruption of the DNA.
Our DNA is corrupted now.
But no. We're talking about the corruption as the Nephilim.
But there were lots of normal people back then too. There weren't all just giants.
No.
They weren't
talking
all
about fallen
offspring of the fallen angels.
Yeah.
But that influence.
I do suspect that they were. You're talking about the lineage of the fallen angels directly. Whether you're talking, and Steve Quayle had standardized the terms. The fallen angels, the Nephilim.
I'll agree with you to the majority extent because Lord has not been born yet when that happened. There needed to be a human who could carry the bloodline. But today, after the Lord came.
Why? Okay, it goes back to the corruption of the DNA of the animals because all the animals were wiped out. So,
they were either corrupted in the DNA and or the mind.
No. I'm going to say the DNA.
I think we don't have to get into this right now, but let's agree to disagree.
We're going to table this because
it's both. I think it's both. I think.
Well, I think if your DNA is corrupted because of the hybrid relation between, the lineage that follows the Nephilim.
But that implies you have no choice in your eternal.
But again, I use the example of the animals.
No, and I understand.
But here we are too, and we probably should let people know the TTP, TTIP, of course, going strong. We need to really pay close attention to this, and for those people who think that their salvation lies in some political answer, or especially if you're a conservative, for example, thinking, maybe somebody like Marco Rubio, who's unlikely to be eligible for president anyway, the procedural vote in the Republican-controlled Senate, don't forget Marco Rubio was the final vote in the TPA or the fast-tracking. But, folks, we want you to make sure that you continue to follow, and we are going to be leading the charge on this, following the TPP and the TTIP. The TPP, of course, is the Trans-Pacific Partnership, going with the 11 countries on the Pacific Rim, and the TTIP would be the Atlantic, shall we say, the Atlantic version of that, just for simplicity's sake. But now that Obama has the TPA, the authority now to fast-track this, and Congress has ceded their authority, we have to pay very close attention to what's happening next, and we cannot allow this. We cannot allow
I'm not laughing at you, but it's passed. How could we stop it now at this point?
I'm
not saying we shouldn't try. I'm just
no. I understand what you're saying, but as a watchman, we have to be extremely forceful and extremely educated in this, so we can help others and expose this to other people, because this will be the final nail in the coffin that unites. Really, you want to fast track not to the TPP or the TTIP, but a fast track to the one world government. This is it. So we have to just warn other people, and that's really the bottom line on this. All right, you know what? Let's get some listener input here. It's more than halfway through the program, so let's take some phone calls right away. I think it's important to get some people.
And we have many people on hold.
Yeah, you know what? If we can have some deference to the first-time callers, that'd be great. If we can do that,
man.
661-244-9839. Press 1. Even if you're not prompted, and you won't be. That's 661-244-9839. Going to be trying to get through as many calls as possible. So, just if we can be as succinct as possible, that'd be great. So let's do it.
Okay, let's start looking for first-time callers. All the numbers, I think we're going to the point where Well, every area code we've taken calls from, so you can't tell either way. 218. 218. We're going to start with you. You won the luck of the draw. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann report. 218.
All right, we'll move right along then.
Wow, that was excellent way to start the phone calls for the week. My pick, my random pick, 505. We're coming to you.
505, you're up.
505.
If you heard the beep, you're up. 505 area code. Going once.
505.
We can hear you. All right, we'll move right along.
Okay. 210. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann report. Thanks for holding.
We have no problem with our phones. 210.
No, we need one of those buttons for sound effects or crickets.
Do we?
I don't know.
Seriously, I'm wondering if we're having an issue with the phone lines.
Let me take a call. I know. I think this is the lady from Pittsburgh. 724. This might be Jen. 724.
Hey, Doug and Joe.
There we go.
It's Jennifer. Okay. I'm going to make it. I just wanted to see what you guys think about how uniting us in some way, if you could maybe possibly elaborate a little bit more. I know language is one of the things that united people, and I sent some links to you guys about how Constantine, back at the time of the Crusades, united everybody through the unification of language using English. That's how English actually became the formal language of Great Britain. And I just sent that over to you guys, so maybe you could read up on it. And it's very much what Constantine used to unify.
Right. Language borders and language borders and culture are really what make a nation, and currency, or money, a nation's currency. And look at the assaults. Look at the assaults on all of them. They're changing the language, not just changing the meaning of words, but changing the language. It's said that to be bilingual is a blessing, but to have a society as bilingual or multilingual is a curse to society, and so think about that.
I find it interesting because they use this almost like a parenting style of correction and almost like this bizarre, I want to use the word insidious way to, punish, this punishing parent-like relationship that whoever these, you call them globalists or whoever, wherever they find themselves, they have this bizarre need, almost psychotic need to humiliate anyone in whatever ways that is, whatever subtle needs they do this, they derive this sick desire or sick excitement out of punishing anyone that does not go along with them. So the only way I could see it is that they actually look for the weakest type of people to prey on, and they use they'll use the Confederate flag. Next thing you know, it'll be, well, you just said earlier about the Christian flag, and it's just they're going to just chip away at every little thing with their psychotic need to, and they get actually a real thrill. This is that sick excitement. Now, any of us that were ever, that knew what being a sinner in the past was, whether we were manipulators or abusers or whatever our life was like before we were saved, we know that we probably had some kind of, got real pleasure out of seeing hurt people get hurt. There's nothing different about that. The difference is when you get Jesus Christ, you grow a conscience. You know what I mean? You start to realize that this is actually going to hurt people. By doing this, that's what makes us different than what we may have been when we were sinners. Not sinners, because we're still sinners, but that's the only thing I can see is that they get this sick pleasure out of watching people suffer. And they're going to do, you'll do it with, if they could do it with Confederate flags, they could do it with putting people on trains, and God knows what they do from there. We saw the example with what happened to the Jewish people in parts of Germany. So to me, it's no different than the Confederate flag to whatever bizarre need they need to get their thrill, but we need to take them serious. And we need to look at the examples of how they won in the past. Like if Constantine won by unifying language, then we got to find ways to unify each other, whether it be language or whichever.
Well, and that's why I think it's so important for us to maintain a strong definition of the terms. Like I said in the beginning, the homosexual marriage or gay marriage, it doesn't exist. We cannot refer to, we can't refer to the homosexual agenda at cohabitation as gay marriage. It just doesn't exist. So we have to standardize the language, much like Steve Quayle did with the standardization of terms like Nephilim, Rephaim, and demons, for example. I'm using that as an example. We have to maintain a strong and agreed upon definition of terms, because that's that's one of the ways that we can fight against this agenda. And we need people to really dig in and to start saying, calling these, refusing to acquiesce to these politically correct yet vague and soft soaping of the language. And you're right. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. I just want to leave you guys off with an example of what happened to me. I was gone for a couple of weeks. I had to finish moving some stuff from the Midwest. And I came back. Well, my neighbor is next door. He's homosexual. And, me being naive kind of in a way, just thinking like, how you can't build a case against somebody unless you have one. Like even though like it's kind of like as Christians we're kind of guilty as charged. Is just for being a Christian, and he's being homosexual.
There's enough evidence to convict you, by the way. You say as Christians, Yeah, I know. Well, I'm just kind of adding that.
Right. Well, according to him, he's an atheist and he's homosexual, so I'm already guilty for being a Christian. It doesn't matter what I say as long as I'm a Christian. He can make up his own mind. In his mind, he already assumes that I'm homophobic and etc. But that's beside the point. That's his idea of how he deals with me. But I was always I just moved to the area, so I don't know him that well. And when I left, he had offered to water my garden and things like that. But as soon as he found out the whole gay marriage decision came down, and I was gone for the couple of weeks while this was all happening. I was out of town. He stopped watering my garden. Okay, he intentionally destroyed my garden because all I can tell you, Doug, Joe, is that he purposely, this $300, a lot of money I put into the garden. I would never have entrusted anybody to just water my plants, right? I would have just had my brother do it. But he intentionally, because he noticed that I was against the homosexual marriage decision that the Supreme Court, supporting whatever Coach Dave had done or what you guys were trying to do down in Washington, D.C. I guess somehow he found out. He searched me out for my Facebook page. He went out of his way to look for me and found out that I was, in fact, against the homosexual marriage decision in the Supreme Court and deliberately destroyed my garden. So if anybody thinks for any second that you could be a nice Christian and just go about life and avoid confrontations with people, it found me, I couldn't. It's unavoidable for us as Christians, some way or somehow. We're just going to have to realize that we can't avoid the confrontation. There are people like him that are very confrontational. They're going to seize whatever opportunity. We cannot afford to be naive. We weren't born yesterday. Okay, they are always looking for a way to fight us, and it'll come in a sneak attack like what happened in my garden, or it'll come subtly. But let's not just assume that we're going to be able to get away with avoiding being Christian because, they didn't see us this time, because I thought at first, guys, I thought I could get away with maybe kind of walking this back a little bit, but there's just no getting around it. He would have sought me out, and you want to talk about why the Bible says we cannot associate with them? I mean, it's not that I can't be nice to somebody. It's not my problem. It's his problem, It's not the fact that I'm a nice person. It's the fact that if they have to, they will find a way to make an example of us. And maybe it took the garden for me to wise up, but I just want to pass this on that we cannot afford to be naive. I know that I found out the hard way.
It's interesting, Jennifer, you said that because recently I needed some work done at my home, and I got to tell you this flat out. And in fact, this is the first time I'm saying this. I had contacted a company, a locally owned company. The owner came to assess the situation. I needed something done, like I said. And when he connected the name with the face and understood, who I was, and really, I mean, virtually, I'm really nobody basically, but knowing what I stood for, and this is in particular response to my position on the homosexual agenda. He declined. He says, "No, I'm not going to work for," and I'm going to quote him, "the likes of you." Okay, and we parted company. So you're not going to, look, expect this. Expect this if you put your neck on the line. Expect this. You're going to be vocal about it.
I remember trying to get in touch with you guys because I was really nervous about coming back here, afraid that it was going to involve police, because this guy these are the kind of people that they're looking not only to fight, but they're going to make an example out of you. Like, they're going to get confrontational, and then they'll start waving their hands and say, "Oh, you just did this," and I was just more intimidated at the fact that we get intimidated, and it's easy. We don't want to be the focal point, but we almost have to realize that they're going to use intimidation tactics every which way possible to put us on the spot or make an example of us. And some of us who don't like to be the center of attention, boy, you want to talk about embarrassing to be in a confrontation with a gay homosexual man. I mean, I wasn't looking for a fight, but I had no choice then realized that he almost destroyed a $350 garden, and that was actually my prepper garden, the thing that if we go through an economic collapse, that's what I'm going to feed my family with. And I'm thinking, oh, my gosh, talk about an attack. Yeah.
Yeah, look, they're bringing the fight to us, and they have brought the fight to us, and we have to acknowledge that and respond in kind, okay? There's no other way. So, Jennifer, look, thanks for the call. We're up against the break here. So God bless you.
Guys.
And
thank you. God bless you.
We'll have to send you some tomato plants or something.
Yeah.
All right, Jennifer. But folks, the fight is coming to us. It's being brought to us, and we have to understand exactly what's taking place here, because it's only going to get worse. And if you're a Christian, oh boy, it's going to be much worse. In Maria Canice's book, "Prepare for Persecution," has never been more needed or more relevant than right now. Let's prepare for persecution. If you go to HagmannHagmann.com, scroll all the way down to the bottom right there. I was honored to be able to write the foreword to the book, and the book itself is two parts. The first part is the convincing. It's really a good book to convince the average person out there who may not quite be fully awake of what's going on. And then the second half is really how to fight operationally and spiritually against the battle in which we find ourselves. So it's really an important book right now, and the battle's coming to us.
Yes, it is. We're going to take our top of the hour break. Just a quick announcement. The upcoming prayer meeting with Paul McGuire is on Thursday, July 23rd, 7 p.m. Paul McGuire will hold a free America's Future Prophecy and Intercessory Prayer meeting at the Garland Hotel, formerly the Beverly Hills Garland Hotel in North Hollywood, California. Parking's free, but you must register early to reserve seats for you and your family, and you can do that at paulmcguire.us. Back to our third and final hour on this Monday, July 13th, 2015. We are going to be taking your calls for the rest of the show. We do have quite a few on hold, but if you want to call in, you might get on the show. Who knows? 661-244-9839.
Make sure you press 1, too, so we can identify you. That's kind of like raising your hand in class, right?
Right. Let's go to area code 210. I think we tried this.
Yeah, we tried it, but let's go back.
Try it again. 210. 210, you're live.
All right, that's the last time we'll
that
one.
We're going to go to area code 870. 870, thanks for holding. You're up next. Live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report. 870?
Go ahead, 870. You know, I'm wondering here, just by the sounds that I'm hearing in my headset.
Here, I have a few more familiar numbers here. 304. 304? You're live on the Hagmann. 304?
Hey, Doug and Joe. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
You on top of
you
on top of a train or what?
Yeah. No, I was vacuuming the floor.
Talk about multitasking. All right.
Well, I listen to you guys every night, so yeah.
All right.
Oh my goodness, time is short. That's all I know.
Extremely.
Yeah. I know. I wrote you an email a while ago, and I said basically, hello.
Yep.
We're basically, here. Yeah. I said, you know how 2/3 of the angels in heaven stayed in heaven. They all gathered at the throne. That was the original Civil War. And we're still in that Civil War. And you know how we're going to make it through this one? Same way. We're going to gather at the throne. I just want to encourage people. You know, we're the ones who decide. No one else. We decide our fate. We decide the outcome.
Well, no, we make the plans and God decides, I think. Maybe is what you're trying to say.
That's what I mean. Well, he put it in our hearts, but we make the choice.
Right, yes.
We're going to be with him or we're not going to be with him. But anyway, that's basically what I wanted to reiterate anyway. Civil War, we're in one.
It's just no shots have been fired yet, but yes, we're indeed in a civil war right now.
But I do. I love people. I'm not at war with people. I really hate it. I really hate fallen angels, and I hate the devil and all of his works and everything. And that's part of the war too. So, and the longer I live and the more days I live through, the more I hate him, and the more I love God. So
that's the way we should all be. Amen.
All right, brothers. You guys have a great night.
Take care.
You too. Have a good night.
All right, Joe, before we go back to the phones, I want to update people on, remember the cyber attack in, it was last week when the stock exchange went down and just got some information, and I'm not sure if this is being reported in the mainstream or in the media anywhere at all, but it is based on investigations. It is suspected that the cyber attack began through the point of entry was through the airlines, the travel reservation desk or computers. Okay, and further investigation finds that the attacks were likely part of a campaign to create a database on Americans, specifically Americans, to obtain their private information.
Usually, I mean, something like that sounds. I mean, I have no doubt that they're gathering that information and using it for whatever purposes they deem necessary. But do they have to? Would they need to go through those levels?
Well,
to get that, I mean, that the only part about that is why take down all these systems to gain information you have access to throughout, 10 other means, easier ways.
Okay, consider it this way, and this is how it was explained to me. The crime itself, let's say you're going to commit a murder. You go in and you stab the homeowner. Well, to cover up that crime, what do? You spread gasoline around and you set the house on fire to burn the house down, destroy the evidence. Consider that example against what we saw happen with respect to the stock market being taken down, as well as the United Airlines.
Well, see, the stock market to me would be the real treasure for the information.
Well,
airlines.
But you've got to look at this incrementally too. When you look at this cyber attack that took place, everyone said it was a glitch, it wasn't a cyber attack.
It took down a Patriot missile system stationed in Germany at the exact same minute it took down the stock exchange. It wasn't a coincidental, accidental.
Right. Correct. And now these systems are intertwined as well. Okay. Now you got to go back in time, and once more, this is why we look back in recent history as well as older history. But 2 years ago, or 2.5, 3 years ago, remember that personal data was stolen from U.S. travel companies. I can't remember exactly when it was, but the hackers made off with subsequently they made off with health records at big insurance companies. They infiltrated federal computers where they stole personnel records on 21.5 million people or thereabouts. That was the largest single theft in the U.S. government records in history. Well, you've got to connect. You got to look back and you got to take a look at what happened then compared to what happened now. Were these individual attacks separate, disparate events? They appear to be now, as we look at this, and my sources are telling me that this is part of a much larger and much greater campaign by Chinese hackers, at least ostensibly by Chinese. We don't know who the end user will be, but they're collecting sensitive information on people. I'll just say it this way, I guess, to explain this a little bit more concisely. The attack that happened 2 years ago, where 21.5 million people's data was taken, what happened last week are connected. The opening shots or the opening salvo of the hack attack 2.5 years ago, or was 2.5 years ago, or over 2 years ago, and it continued. And what we saw last week was a continuation of that coordinated campaign that began that long ago. And hackers stole Social Security numbers, other personal data in that government breach. And I find it very telling too that this renegade, lawless person that we have in the White House and those people around them, they absolutely refuse to identify any perpetrator, any suspect. Some are calling it the Facebook of intelligence. Okay, this is part of a sweeping campaign to create a database, like a private Facebook on Americans, that could also be used to obtain commercial and government secrets. So understand, this is bigger than what's being reported. They're stockpiling records. By the middle of last year, it was absolutely clear but unreported that hackers were stockpiling people's health records, people's Social Security numbers, even people's sexual preferences that are contained in the health records. So we better take a look at this and understand the scope and nature. Well, what's the end result here going to be? You said it before the show in your research. They're going for a national identity card, correct? Yes. But part and parcel of the national identity card, the information of which can be hacked. Well, what's unhackable or less likely to be hacked than a national identity card? That would be the RFID chip that is placed underneath your skin and carried with you forever. And this is how they're going to use, in one of the ways they're going to use or justify this kind of chip implant, RFID implant. It's all coming together.
Yeah, and whether it's a wearable or a permanent tattoo, whatever, it is going to be a physical mark, but it's going to be more than that also. And I'll just say it again. I mean, it's the law. And I guess I can just read a very short piece from this. Came out. Let me make sure I get this right here. Just 20 days ago. No. This came out. Okay, unique device identification, direct marketing of devices came out on June 26, 2015.
All right.
In here, but the law actually came out a few years back. Yeah. It talks about which devices will be directly marketed, and it gets into there's Class 1 device, a Class 2 device, and a Class 3 device. It says these compliance dates for the in which you must comply with the UDI direct marketing requirements based on the device category are as follows. Class 3 device and devices licensed under the Public Health Service Act, 9/24/16. Class 2 device, 9/24/2018. Well, what is a Class 2 device? It is from the government document, Class 2 Special Control Guidance Document, Implantable Radio Frequency Transponder System for Patient Identification and Health Information. So there, oops, that's my read out loud for the PDF. Let me shut that off. But so right there, they already have in the law, the mandatory compliance dates based on which class device. Like a Class 1 could be a pacemaker, a hearing aid. I'm not sure which is which. But the Class 2 is specifically and only designated as an RFID system for patient ID and electronic health records. Simple as that.
Right.
And it goes on to say that this Class 2, its device is intended and able to access secure patient information corresponding to health information in humans. This is classification of implantable radio frequency transponder systems for patient identification and health information. It means there will be an implantable radio frequency transponder system to comply with the requirement of a Class 2 special control. The special control means that manufacturers of these implantable RFID systems for patient ID and health systems will follow recommendations before being introduced for commercial distribution in the U.S. They will be able to market it without being subject to pre-market notification approvals. Now, it goes on from there to talk about this Class 2 device. But one thing that they failed to mention in here is that with that compliance date, and they have different subtitles, like the least burdensome approach. They're talking about how to implement it with the least amount of resistance from the public. They talk about how to mitigate these potential security factors. They are concerned about, and they will give incentives to people, as they say in here, who accept it. This is a part of information security. Not only that, your financial security, your own identification security, all your identification. And if you say no, you're not going to be what do they call it, an authorized person or part of the community. So when you say no, I don't want this, you will not be or have access, just like the Bible says, to buying or selling. You will be ostracized from the community. Now, There was
legally
something released the other day,
by the way.
Yeah, about the emergency provisions. And Department of Health and Human Services just awarded a public health preparedness grant of $840 million to state, local, and public health care systems for the emergency preparedness under the cooperative agreement funds distributed for two programs, Hospital Preparedness Program and Public Health Emergency Preparedness Program. Additionally, they will be awarded another $611 million for protecting health from the impacts of emergencies. And they go on to say, such as disasters, it requires constant, continuous vigilance, real-time information gathering. It's a national health security imperative. So they state in this page, in these documents, that not only do they not have to implement it through rolling out their pilot programs and persuasion of the people, but if the president decides that too many people are coughing in Boston tomorrow and wants to implement the powers behind the executive order of respiratory illnesses, that is considered a national emergency. And it could be implemented like that. I mean, that's kind of far out there, but it can happen.
Interesting. Well, getting back to an issue, and folks, this is something that you gotta remember this name and remember this claim. The name, Senator Tammy Baldwin from the state of Wisconsin. That's the name, Senator Tammy Baldwin, Democrat from Wisconsin. Here's the claim. The Constitution's First Amendment protections for free speech apply only to institutions of faith and not individual Americans. Did you know that? Now, Baldwin is the country's first openly lesbian mayor of the U.S. Senate.
Well, then they don't apply to her either, do they?
Well, apparently not.
So she should shut up then, huh?
She was asked by an MSNBC, what other host, whether a bakery whose owners have religious objections to the ruling should be compelled by the government to bake homosexual wedding cakes. Of course, I'm inserting the word there. Baldwin insisted that religious free speech has no place outside of churches, synagogues, or mosques. And she said this. She said, certainly the First Amendment says that in institutions of faith there is absolute power to observe a deeply held religious beliefs. But I don't think it extends far beyond that. I'm certainly glad that we've got her, Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin, to explain the First Amendment to us, aren't you?
Well, yeah, because she's partially right. The only part she got wrong is that it doesn't pertain to religious-based institutions either. It was a law that was granted in the founding of this country and was gone a long time ago.
Well, arguably, yes. I mean,
all
right.
With NDAA, with all the laws, executive orders, the expansion of governments into, how much toilet paper you can use when you go to the bathroom and how much, salt you can have with your lunch. There's no real freedom here. You have an illusion of freedom. Just like the American military has a lot of power, but they rely more on their projection of power, what other people perceive as power, and that's much higher than actual power. These illusions can be, we see it every day. We talked about it in the first hour with the Confederate flag story. There's nothing illegal about that, is there? Well, wait 10 minutes.
It's coming, and that's right. See, they want us to shut up.
And in fact, if you went through historical precedents and based on how the founders made and came to these decisions of rights, the church was the biggest persecutor of the believers before that. If anything, the people would have the individual right to free speech before the religious institutions. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it would probably it'd probably be better to have a lot of context, add a lot of context to that. But yeah,
we live in a time now where we, as in the churches, have to be fearing of the government. There was a time where everybody was fearful of the churches because they would just kill everybody because of the claiming heresy.
And you know, you go back, and that's beyond the scope of tonight's program, of course. But you know, the Jesuit agenda. Look, we have to be intellectually honest here to understand the power of the Jesuits behind the Illuminati. You know, just to be clear, and I referenced this I think last week. Dr. Stanley Monteith, who has passed away, wrote just a fantastic book. About the Brotherhood of Darkness, where he likened the suspects, you know, the people behind this New World Order, the organizations behind the New World Order, are many, absolutely many. In fact, he equated he mentioned the murder on the Orient Express and having the crime scene tampered with to put the inspector aboard that train, put him on wild goose chases. Bottom line was all of the passengers were guilty of murder, were part of it. They all conspired. They all played a role. And that's the same with these secret the secret societies, whether it be the central bankers or the bankers, you know, themselves. I mean, there are just too many clues, he writes. And that's true, because, you know, you could say, like, again, it's the central bankers who are conspiring. It's the, I mean, who are the elite? Who are the Illuminati? Well, you know, it's a mixture of these people. Now, some people right away, and I should spend just a minute here talking about this, because some people will say, hey, the Jewish bankers, the Jews who own everything, the banks and the media. You'll hear that a lot, okay? You will hear that a lot. Those who believe that, for example, the Jewish bankers are responsible for our problems, they'll cite works like the book that was written by Benjamin Disraeli, for example, the Prime Minister of Great Britain. What happens is and a lot of people don't realize that, you know, many Jewish banks, for example, are controlled by men who are not Jewish. So one would ask why Benjamin Disraeli, the author, the Prime Minister, who was Jewish, why would he write a novel about a Jewish banking conspiracy? And why do some people believe that Jews are responsible for our problems? The answer is very simple, because they have been deceived. You see, the groups, all of them, have disseminated false information in an effort to convince us it's the Jews who are the source of our problems. And anti-Semitism is a smokescreen created to conceal the identity of our true enemies. Really. Okay, so you got to understand that now that it's different than Zionism, but again, that's beyond the scope of tonight's program. When we look at who's behind the curtain, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergers, the Club of Rome, the Trilateral Commission, and so on, and I can continue with all of these groups, just understand this. They're all part of this. They all overlap one another. They all have similar rosters, members, if you will. So don't get caught up. Especially don't get caught up in the lie and the smokescreen of one or more. The Masons and so on. The Jesuits.
They're all equally responsible.
The Order of the Quest and Skull and Bones. These are all societies and groups.
Right. Well, the real powers remain. I mean, anybody, anything, any entity, thing, person, family who holds real, true actual power will never hear their names.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean,
behind the curtain.
Yeah. People think it's the Rothschilds that ends there. There's another family. One Doc Marquis just closed to us, and that's not even the one I'm talking about. There's another one that has been throughout history, from the Crusades up until the founding of the New World. They were notorious, and somehow they disappeared, but they didn't really disappear.
Well,
that's with the M. I'll let you find out on your own. It's very simple.
All right.
But let's go back and see if our phones are operational. We were having some storms come through here. I don't know if you knew that, Dad.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe that
could have been a cause. Maybe see out the window.
Yeah.
I can do that. I can look out the window and see if it's raining. All right.
Area code 256. You're up next. Thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, gentlemen. How are you doing tonight?
Good. Without a brief pause, I was worried. Good.
I had to turn the speaker off on my phone. Okay, 18 years ago, I moved to Alabama from New Jersey. So I've got a pretty good idea of the mindsets of both the Yankees and the Southerners. I'm also in a little county called Etowah County where Glencoe is, where they just went through the thing with the Christian flag. In December, it started with that group, Freedom from Religion.
The Confederate flag.
Weinstein, yeah.
You said Christian flag. You meant Confederate flag?
Yeah, the Christian flag. No. The Christian flag in Glencoe that y'all referenced.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In Alabama.
Okay.
Well, It started in December with this Freedom from Religion. They hit a little town called Piedmont, which is the next county over. They were having a Christmas parade dedicated to Jesus, and they threatened to sue the town. So the town backed down and said, okay, we're just going to have a regular Christmas parade. Well, all the people showed up at the parade with their own Jesus sign and turned it into a Jesus parade anyway. So then they hit also at Christmas one in this county, Rainbow City, where they were threatening to sue them over the nativity scene that they had out front of City Hall. So they took it down first, but then everybody freaked out so bad they put it back up, and they had a rally out there, and it stayed. And this was the same Freedom from Religious group. Now this is the same group that's hitting Glencoe, which is in the same county as the Rainbow City one.
Right. This is the same group.
The same group in the
same
county.
This is a group that worked for the Pentagon, removing, the etchings, Bible verse etchings and rifles, who stood up and gave lectures inside of the Pentagon to soldiers that Christians were the number one domestic terrorist threat, that the proselytizing of the gospel was rape, spiritual rape.
Right, and somehow their attention got drawn to this little tiny county of less than 200,000 people. It's almost like we're a test case for the South. But what kind of made me smile, your very first caller talked about how they're hitting the weak people, to get things rolling with the Confederate flag. But the thing is, the South is not the weak people.
No, but you know what?
I believe... What?
These people with their government connections have access to massive bulk amounts of data on each of those citizens, each of the government officials, the leaders, and they can gauge, based on the analytics of that information, will these people put up a fight? Will they? I mean, they know through, not by chance. They didn't come there by chance, and they didn't get the church to roll over by chance. These people do their homework. They know. Not to mention they have help from, the dark side.
These people aren't rolling over, though. They're, that flag that came down in Glencoe went to one of the local restaurants. It's now on private property. They were giving out free Christian flags last Saturday, and there was going to be a huge rally this Saturday. But what I'm seeing is they're now hitting the South. I lived in New Jersey. I'm 54 years old. So I got to watch downfall, the liberals coming in and changing everything. I watched that all up there. I lived through it. I moved down here. It was about 15 years behind, and I'm watching it happen here. But down here, there are some wide open people. Some wide open people. It's not going to go the same as it did when they rolled over the North, and which makes me believe that they're getting ready for the Civil War thing, because they're starting to poke the ones that will stand up. Texas, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida. This is where you got your wild people. You got some, like I said, some wide open people, and they're good people.
And that's good, because they will bring an example of true faith and patience in that faith, and in the face of your world crumbling down. It will show the character of true believers, because these people aren't going to stop.
But wait a second, Joe. Caller, what do you think the end game objective here, based on what you just said? What do you think? What's the end game objective here?
The end game objective that I see is the start of the Civil War. They're going to poke the wrong people, just like they're poking the bear, Russia. They're poking the Southerners, and you've got the wild boys down here that do not take being poked well. I don't know if y'all have seen the videos where they've got miles worth of trucks now flying the Confederate flags.
Right.
All around here now, you've got your pickup trucks. They've got a Confederate flag on one side, Christian flag on the other side. They will not roll over, and they know that. And I think that's going to be how they start things.
His foundation was the Freedom from Religion Foundation?
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
That hit all 3 times. All three instances were the same place. And the thing is, they never give a name. They will say that a citizen complained, but they never name a citizen.
Right.
So the government's now, it's funny, City Hall's rolling over. Now, I know the mayor of Glencoe with the Christian flag, and he is actually a heavy-duty Christian, and he hit his knees and he prayed. And he said, our town can't afford this, but our people individually can. We need y'all to stand up as individual people. And that's exactly what's happening. City Hall gave up the flag, but all the private individuals are picking it up. Spreading, it's kind of like a way of pushing it out into the community, and it seems to be actually catching on. But the thing is, I think they saved the South for last, because they knew they'd come out fighting. They're going to push the wrong buttons, and they're going to stir it up. So that was just, my observation from watching. I watched the North fold quietly. The South will not fold quietly. It's a whole different mindset down here.
With your observation, because this is very astute. I mean, you're very astute here. Do you see things ramping up pretty quickly? I mean, that's obvious by the information you provided. Mm-hmm. What's your sense in terms of this thing really going hot? I mean, and I know this is kind of geographically specific, but in your area, with the pushback, with the Confederate flag and the Catholic flag, the Christian flag and the Confederate flag, the pushback. Do you see this?
All it's going to take is for them making it illegal. There was stuff floating around on Facebook, and you mentioned it earlier about the guy who's saying make it illegal for anybody to fly Confederate flag. That's all it's going to take, because they're going to refuse to comply. They will refuse to comply, and that'll be individual people, not governments.
All right.
So if you drove through here and you could see the number of the Christian flags and the Confederate flags on the vehicles and out front of people's houses now, it's incredible.
Wow.
And they won't lay down. We're the ones that fought to keep gun rights and everything else. You don't have any of the southern states that have given up any of their gun rights. It's all up north. So they saved us for last. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And they will. They are pushing.
Very important call and very important information. And people might think, well, that this is a given, but to hear you say this and to understand once more the difference in even the subtle cultural differences, whether you're up here, up here in the north or down there in the south. Okay, I get that. Very important to understand the subtle cultural differences and things inside the Beltway. Not the same as down in the Bible Belt.
Right, it's almost like two different countries.
Yeah.
It's
wow.
Just different. So anyway, with Jade Helm coming in, I've got one of my sons lives in San Antonio. He works in Midland, out in Texas.
Okay.
Jade Helm coming through. I just find that interesting that they picked this time to start poking the South with things like the Confederate flag and the Christian flag, as Jade Helm's getting ready to ramp up.
That's a good point. We have been remiss tonight in referencing the official start of Jade Helm in 48 hours, or less than 48 hours. But yeah, nothing is a coincidence. I don't believe.
I don't think so either. Point. Well, I appreciate you taking my call.
Oh, we appreciate the call. Thank you so much. Very,
Have
very
a good night.
Call. God bless. All right. Wow. Yeah. Looking at this through the prism of Jade Helm, looking at this through the prism of the actions of the left, the liberation theology, the religious left, look at this religious left and immigration, religious left and anti-Americanism, anti-Semitic perspectives, the understand, you've got to understand this leftist, socialist liberation theology and philosophy. It's very interesting. And that caller made a good point about what we're seeing now, the ramp up of the emotions compared to Jade Helm, or in concurrent with Jade Helm. Very good.
All right.
Let's rock. Okay.
We have some new callers that weren't on hold earlier. We're going to try a few of those because the earlier callers seem to be having problems.
And we apologize, folks, with the phones. There is some storms going on here, so we don't know what the deal might be.
Let's go to area code 772. 772. Thanks for your patience on hold.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hey.
What's on your mind?
Good. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. And I'm down here in South Florida, and I agree with what your caller said, your previous caller. I got a question. I was thinking, do you guys know if the senators, when these guys elected, when they go up to Washington, are they chipped or anything?
I'm not sure about the lawmakers, but I know soldiers are and have been.
Certain soldiers.
I was just wondering if they were being, I can't imagine all of them have that much grip on them, but if they were being mind controlled or something to go along with this agenda.
No, my dad is right. Certain soldiers, not all, especially those who go overseas.
Yeah, but you know what, caller? You make a good point. The mind control, boy. Part of my research this weekend was into mind. It had a lot to do with mind control and the projects of the CIA, following the revelations in the interestingly named Rockefeller Commission that had exposed some mind control techniques. There are some allegations right now that in addition to blackmail, there are some mind control type of operations taking place. But I would, rather than, based on my researches that included things this weekend, I would say that the Senate, the main people, are globalists who are just salivating for a seat at the globalist table, and those who are more reluctant. Okay, those who are more reluctant are being subjected to threats and blackmail. That's my belief. Okay.
I was just doing a little critical thinking this weekend.
Well, that's something that we can, the mind control field. It's a very interesting and very upsetting. It's very upsetting to read because the victims, largely veterans, largely women, children. But thank you for that critical thinking. I think it's something we should keep in the back of our mind.
Yeah, and that's another thing I was thinking about. All these kids that are getting these vaccines that are coming up with autism, is it possible that is another form of this agenda that at some point in the future these kids can be triggered?
That's a great question. You know what, Joe? Your thoughts on that? I don't know if like a vaccine could be a reagent. I think it could. Well, let me just say this. I think that the heavy metals, in addition to the toxicity, I do believe that there is a possibility, and I don't know. I'd have to talk to interview scientists on this, but the heavy metal influx into one's body could enhance.
Eugenics. It's eugenics.
Well, it's eugenics,
and it's also conditioning, but for the younger generation to.
But Joe, you're missing my point. Could the heavy metals that are the reagents in these, or could the heavy metals that are the contained in the vaccine, could they affect your electromagnetic or electrostimuli?
Sure. I mean, a flu shot every year. I should be turning into Iron Man pretty soon. No, I'm kidding. You're right, Ed. They do have so many effects that we do see that manifest in the more major afflictions like Alzheimer's, and a lot of people get real sick after the vaccine. But long-term, aware, you can't tell what's going on with you. Long-term, they do have effects. I'm sure they could weaken certain systems. I've heard stories stemming from Kissinger's Memorandum 200, introducing an agent and a vaccine, and 40 years later, the counterpart to that activates that initial dose of whatever was in that vaccine. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities.
I was just doing some critical thinking, and I have a lot more, but I'm going to just say this, and I'm going to end it. The guy that went to the flea market and saw the flag and, went to having his convulsions and all this stuff and called 911. I remember back, I think it was last year, maybe a year before, when these people would go to McDonald's or Burger King and then get their order right and they call 911, they were arrested.
Right. And that was my... Yeah, I mean, why wasn't this person arrested for misuse of an emergency line?
Yeah. And I guess, too, Doug and Joe, that, now that the prisons are so easy to break out of, we might have this mass prison break eventually. Okay.
Interesting.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
God bless.
Bye.
Oh, wow. Very interesting. The folks, just to make sure who we know who are one of the agents of change, is the enemies we look, the enemies of our freedoms, our religious freedoms, the Freedom from Religion Foundation. If you don't know about them, it would be good to do some research. This is a group that was founded back in 1978. It's a non-profit 501c3 group. It's got roughly around, 13,000, 14,000 members right now. Its mission is to promote free thought and keep state and church separate. Folks, they cite the Constitution. They are They are really rewriting the Constitution publicly, and they're being intellectually disingenuous. And the people behind the foundation, Dan Barker and his wife Anne Laurie Gaylor. Barker was a Christian preacher for 20 years, or 19 years, before renouncing his faith in 1984. Gaylor, she earned a journalism degree from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 1980, and co-founded that particular Freedom from Religion campaign with her mother and the late John Sontark in 1978. These people, man, 501c3, their budget, they're heavily funded by various foundations.
And I'm sure a portion of that is okay only if all those profits, aside from the basic necessities they need to run their church, went to help other people in desperate need. Unfortunately, that is a very minuscule example to the rule. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, but we need to understand who these people are and call them out. And you know, it's we, the Judeo-Christian component of our civilization, of our country, the Christians in our country are being harassed. We're being really, I mean, that's what it is. We're being harassed. When you cannot even conduct business and cannot choose who to serve or who not to serve, much like that individual who I had the encounter with, he said, I'm not going to do work for me, for you, for me, given my position on many issues. Now, this person was completely, and I had no clue when I contacted. I had no clue whatsoever. But hey, you know what? I would not want to give my business. Why would anyone want to give their business or their money to someone or a company like that? So what you do is go to their direct competition and hire them for the plumbing work or whatever you might need done. And that's exactly what I did. But you don't say, hey, well, I'm going to sue you. Do you? No, of course not. All right. We only have about 6 minutes left of the show.
Okay. That was a quick hour.
Yeah.
We always have great callers. It's
we do.
I wish we could get through to the ones that weren't there for whatever reason.
Yeah, and we apologize. There's nothing we can do. Sometimes the phone lines are such that we just don't. I don't. So we apologize for that. It's kind of out of our hands, though. The one last thing, I'll just want to make this announcement here. The executive branch, Obama, as well as the Gang of Eight and those people pushing the TPP and the TPIP and the TPA right now, and just to show you how twisted and what can be done, because this is a living agreement. As let me see here. I just want to make sure this is correct. Okay, here we go. Malaysia. It was recently decided that Malaysia was to be upgraded from a Tier 3 country to a Tier 2 country, meaning the status of Malaysia is upgraded in this TPP agreement, which hasn't been passed yet. The TPA has been passed, but the TPP is pending. Now, just to show you how bad this is, what has taken place with respect to Malaysia. Let me just grab this key sentence here. Okay, stand by. Okay, here it is. the Obama regime allowed the upgrade of Malaysia from a Tier 3 country to a Tier 2 country, not because of anything Malaysia did to improve its record, but because it was politically expedient. However, here's the issue. Despite this raising of Malaysia in its status within the TPP, what the countries had to do was bury the fact that Malaysia, just 2 months ago, police found 139 mass graves along the Malaysian border that contained migrant workers who had been trafficked or held for ransom. Okay? Now think about this for a moment. They upgraded the status of Malaysia from a Tier 3 to a Tier 2 country within the framework of the TPP arbitrarily, despite the fact that Malaysia's got a very sketchy and a very, a horrific reputation in terms of human rights. But it was politically expedient and also benefited the corporations who are involved in the TPP. Now, why are we allowing this to take place? It's because no one is reporting on this, and this whole issue is being buried. If you think this is a small issue, it's not. It's not a small issue, because what's going to happen here is you're going to have, in America, well, throughout the West, we will be subjected to slave labor via and thanks to the TPP. In large part, TPP sacrifices humans, if you will, human rights, human health, humanity's future, as fodder for the global elite. End of story. You might say it's not surprising, but that doesn't make it any less troublesome. More on the TPP as the week progresses, because this is a big deal and we need to keep this in the forefront. Not Bruce Jenner, not anything, none of that. As well as the deal with Iran, what's Israel going to do? Will Israel, being led by Netanyahu, will they strike once a deal is formulated? You know, things are kind of, are we not seeing things kind of take shape for the third quarter of this year? Maybe beginning in September? Looks that way. It looks like we're on schedule for that. Hey, if nothing happens, great. But boy, things are kind of shaping up toward the September timeline. Don't you feel it? I do.
Yeah. Things are the only differentiating opinion I'll say to that is so many things have been pointing to that it's just kind of like the July 4th overhyping. Sure.
Maybe it's
always both ways, but I do believe that it has nothing to do with Jade Helm. Whatever's going to happen, if it happens in September.
No, yeah, it's going to be. To me, it's going to be. Look, it's going to be a whole. The weight of all of these little weights, it's just going to collapse the system. It's just going to be an overload.
The Pope will be here, which will push the country right over into the Atlantic. No, I'm kidding.
Wonder if he's going to bring his Pope.
Last blood moon.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of things shaping up. Very important time. Tomorrow, Steve Quayle with Ross Powell, first hour. Timothy Alberino making an announcement tomorrow night about his finds. It's Book of Daniel, you know. Knowledge will be made. Knowledge will be open. So, folks, stay tuned for that tomorrow night. In the meantime, stay safe. God bless. Thanks for listening.